Welcome along to part 2 of our video tutorial where we are piecing together a flyer for a cafe that is advertising breakfast. This is as far as we got to in the first tutorial. We're now up to adding more food around the outside of the page. Okay, and the next thing we're going to add in is some blueberry muffins. So what I need you to do is head up to the file menu and go to open, and I want you to select the blueberry muffins. That will open up this document here, and we want to select a few things out of this document. We want to select this nice looking muffin here with little green leaves on top, as well as a few of these blueberries. Alrighty, so we're going to use our quick selection tool again to select this muffin. So zoom in a bit and just click and drag over the top of that muffin. Now you may need to reduce the size of your brush to get in a bit closer to some of these edges to make sure you make a good selection. So you want to get close to the edges up here. Doesn't quite select them too well in places, but a majority of those edges should be selected perfectly. Okay, looking around now, we seem to have everything selected pretty well, so let's click select the mask at the top to make sure we've made a good selection. Alright, so that's not too bad. There's a few little messy pieces here and there that need a touch up, so let's just do the same settings as before where we've got the feather. Give it a 5 pixel feather, 65% contrast, and we'll shift the edge by -25 again. Okay, that makes a pretty nice selection of the muffin. So where you've got output to, make sure you output it to a new layer, and we click OK. And that outputs a new layer, which is called background copy. We will rename it to Muffin. You can hide that layer for the time being and just make your background visible again and just go and select that background layer, because what we want to do now is select these blueberries. Now if we were to select these blueberries, we've got to do them one by one, and if we were to do them with the quick selection tool, Photoshop would have a hard time distinguishing between the blueberry and the background because they're similar colours. We can have a go and see how it's going to look. So I'm just clicking over this blueberry. Actually, that's done a pretty good job, so you might just stick with that. You can touch up the edges in a moment. So that's done a good job of selecting that one. So let's click select a mask. We'll see how that looks. Yeah, it's actually not too bad. I thought we were going to have a hard time selecting that, but let's roll with it. Again, over the side here, let's put in our usual settings: 5 pixel feather, 65% contrast, and a -25 edge shift. That's a good looking blueberry, so output that to a new layer, click OK. Rename it to Berry 1. So we're going to do a couple of berries here, that's why we need to have Berry 1 written in. Hide those two layers and bring your background back. Okay, and we're going to select the next berry. Let's see if we can do it with the quick selection tool again. See how close it goes. It's actually doing a better job than I thought it would. Alright, so that next berry looks pretty good. I think we selected it the best we can. So let's click select a mask up the top. And we'll just tidy up those edges again. So 5 pixel feather, 65% contrast, -25 edge shift. If we zoom in a little bit, they're a little bit rough around some of the edges. So what you can do is grab your brush tool over here, and you can either use plus or minus to add more onto the selection or get rid of some on the selection. So I'm just going to go around some of those bumpy little edges and try and add a little bit more to the selection. Just ever so slightly. Probably can't see that doing much, but it is adding a very little bit to the selection, just to fix up some of those little bumps in the blueberry. That looks pretty nice. So I'm just going to output that to a new layer and click OK, and we'll rename that background copy to Berry 2. Alright, make the background appear one last time. Scrolling down, we're just going to get one more berry, so I might get this dirty looking one here. So again, we'll try the quick selection tool, see if it's going to select him alright. Looks like it's selecting a little bit too much, so you might need to get the minus brush and just knock a bit off it. Alright. Alright, that's looking pretty sweet. So what we'll do is select and mask one more time just to tidy up that selection. Yeah, it looks good. So we'll feather at 5, contrast 65, and shift edge -25. If you want, you can use your brush to just tidy up some of those edges a little bit so they're not quite as pointy. Now I'm pretty happy with that. So output that selection to a new layer and click OK. Rename that layer to Berry 3. And we have made all the selections that we need. So leave the background hidden and just bring back your Muffin, Berry 1, Berry 2, Berry 3. And I'll just zoom out here so we can see everything. There's our 4 different selections. What we can do now, might highlight them all at once, pick them up and drag them over to our document and drop them into place. Hold Shift, resize them. We're going to get them just up in that top right hand corner. Press tick when you're done. Now they're all on different layers, which is good because what we want to do is duplicate some of these. So on the Muffin layer here, just come and right click on the Muffin layer and duplicate that layer. I want you to call it Muffin 2 rather than Muffin Copy. Click OK. And you've now got 2 muffins on top of each other there, so just drag one out to the side. Alright, they're a little bit big, those muffins, so what we might do is just click on them both, making sure the Show Transform controls are selected. I held down Shift to select both of them, and I'm just going to resize them, get them down a little bit so they look a bit more realistic. If you want, just so they don't look like a mirror image of each other, click on this bottom one and just give it a rotate so the green leaves are on a different angle. Okay, that way it's going to look a bit more realistic. Press the tick at the top when you're done. If you're happy with them, just leave them as they are. I'm just going to nudge them around a little bit with my keyboard so they're a little bit closer to the edge of the page. Now these berries, let's get them into a position that we want. So I've got one berry about there, maybe another one there. Get this guy and put him down here. Now I'm going to duplicate these berries as well. They're a little bit big, by the way. I might even make them a little bit smaller. That's a bit better. Now a quick way to duplicate, instead of right clicking on these berries and going duplicate layer, that's one way of doing it, and it is pretty quick. What you can do using your move tool is just hold the Alt key on your keyboard. Okay, and when you've got the Alt key on your keyboard selected, you'll see a black and white arrow appear over the top of your berry, which means you can click and drag down a second berry. Okay, so there's another berry. Okay, I might do it again for this one up here. So click, hold down Alt, and drag across. I get another berry. So in total I want to have 5 berries, and this one here I might put just behind that muffin. So it's a bit hidden. These two could probably come a little bit closer to that berry, into that blueberry muffin. Something like that should look pretty good. Okay, so make sure they're not identical. If you want, rotate these a little bit just to ensure they look a bit different from one another. What else did we copy? That one there. I'll just give him a spin around. There we go. So they all look a little bit different from each other now. So that's our blueberry muffins, and our little blueberry's looking quite good. The last thing I want to bring in is a pancake. Okay, so we're going to zoom out there and go to File and Open, and we've got a pancake. It's going to go in the bottom right hand corner. So what we want to cut out here is basically the plate and everything on it. We don't want the handle of the pancake. We can get away without that because we're going to just push it off the edge of the page, but we do want the plate selected. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use our elliptical marquee tool because this plate is basically a perfect circle. Starting at the top center there, I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to click and drag down. And I want to keep dragging down until I get pretty much level with the bottom of my plate, and I'll move that selection across, and I'm going to hope I've made a good selection. And yep, got it first time, which is lucky. You might not be as lucky as me and get that selection right the first time. Okay, you might need to press Control D to deselect and get rid of those marching ants, and you'll have to go again. But make sure you hold Shift to draw that little circle selection, because it will help you draw a perfect circle, and it should fit perfectly just around the inside of your plate, like so. Now once you've made this selection, there's a few things we need to do. First thing is we need to get rid of this leaf. Okay, it looks a bit awkward having the tip of a leaf sitting on our plate. So what we're going to do is we're going to try two things here. First thing I'm going to try is the spot healing brush tool. Okay, what that does is basically gets rid of spots on your page, or unwanted spots. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag over my green leaf, and we'll see how it goes. See if it gets rid of it. It got rid of most of it, so that's a pretty good effort. If you go over that again, I don't know if it's going to get rid of that. No. So we're stuck with that little bit there. So what we're going to need to do to get rid of it is use this tool here, the clone stamp tool. We're going to clone a section of plate, say up here, and put it over on top of this leaf. Okay, so with the clone tool selected, first thing you need to do is hold down the Alt key, and you need to click where you would like to copy some of the plate from. So over here where it's nice and white, I'm going to click once with the Alt key pressed down, and that makes a selection. Now I'm going to go over to my green leaf, make my brush a bit bigger by using my right square brackets, and simply paint over that leaf. Okay, it comes out a little bit different colour, so I might need to press Alt again, click on a new target, and then come across and start painting again. And that seems to be getting the colour a bit better this time. Okay, so it's looking a bit better. There's a bit of a dark patch there for some unknown reason, so I want to get rid of that. You can grab other targets, so hold down Alt and click over here maybe. Try and blend it in. Oops. If we zoom out and have a look, it's not too bad. It's not great. Not too bad. You could possibly get your spot healing tool again and just paint over that section, and that kind of blends it all in pretty nicely. Okay, so a little bit tricky, that tool. If you do get stuck, just put your hand up and ask me, but that has got rid of that green leaf. Right, the rest of the selection looks pretty good. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is we'll just copy it. Go over to our poster and we'll paste it. Slightly different way to what we did before, but it does the job. Using your move tool and ensuring show transform controls are on, hold down Alt and Shift, resize that plate. Now that plate's going to go down in the bottom right, as I said before, and the handle goes off the edge of the page, so you don't have to worry about that. I want to get a majority of the fruit on the page though, so I'm going to hold Shift and just clicking outside the corner there, you can just rotate it around like so. Push it down into the corner there. Got to make sure that handle has disappeared off the edge of the page, so something like that's alright. We'll need to make it a bit smaller to get the plate size similar to those other plates. Don't want it looking out of proportion, but something like that looks pretty good to me. Alrighty, so that is all the food on our page now. So what I'm going to do is add a drop shadow now behind each of these, just to make them look like they're sitting on the table, like we did with the coffee beans. So I might start with the croissants up here by clicking on them. What I'm going to do is head over to the layer where it says croissants and double click next to it in that empty space, and just add a drop shadow like we did before. Okay, it's really hard to see on this black background anyway, but we have added a drop shadow in with the same settings that we had for when we put it on the coffee beans. So just click OK. Now what I want you to do is right click on the croissants, and I want you to copy the layer style. The layer style is just the drop shadow, so it's going to copy that drop shadow effect. Now I'm going to click on every other one of those layers. Let me get the fruit as well. And I'm simply going to right click, and I'm going to go paste layer style. And that puts a drop shadow on everything else in my document. Okay, you can see now that everything's got this little effects button next to it. You can hit the arrow just to minimize those effects. You don't need to see that everything's got a drop shadow. Just makes your layers box a bit confusing. This layer 1 layer here that's popped up, that's actually the pancake, so I might rename that to pancake. And that's looking pretty good. So we've got drop shadows now behind all of our food items. Alright. What else we need to put in? We need to put in a little orange slice over here, and we need to put some sugar cubes over here. Once we've got that done, that should be all the food that we need for our page. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to go place embedded for the orange peel. It's an easy one. Press the tick at the top just to bring that in. Now we're going to make a selection using the quick selection tool. Make sure the little plus button up the top is selected. Click and drag over your orange until it's all selected. And to remove that background, let's just use a layer mask. So down the bottom here, let's get rid of everything outside the selection by pressing that layer mask button. Using my move tool now, I'm going to show the transform controls, hold down Alt and Shift, and simply move that orange over to the side here. Make it a similar kind of size to these oranges down here. It might be a little bit smaller just so it fits nicely. But you want to get that orange over the side like so. I'm then going to hold the Alt key, and then, whoops, I better press the tick up the top first. Then I'll hold the Alt key and just drag out a second copy of that orange. Okay, give it a bit of a rotate so it's not exactly the same as the one above it. Press the tick at the top. You should now have two oranges that just sit somewhere off to the side, like so. The last thing I want to bring in is a sugar cube, so let's go to File and we'll place embed again and bring in some sugar. Now there's 3 cubes here. We just want this main one that sits on top. So press the tick just to place that in, and what we're going to do, we're going to use the polygonal lasso tool this time. And this one works by clicking to make a selection. So you need to find a start point. So I'm going to start up in this corner. I'm going to go click once. When I move my mouse, I've got a line following it. So what I'm going to do is go straight across to this next corner and click again. Carefully going to go around this little edge, go click, 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 and then do another big straight line down to the next corner. Go click, 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 come across to the next one, click, 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 and then head up to the last corner, click, click, and click. Once you click back on the start point, it will close up your selection and the little marching ants will appear. All I want you to do now, you could select and mask if you wanted to, okay, but it looks fine as it is. If you wanted to, you could feather it the 5 pixels, you could do the 65% contrast and shift the edge by -25. That'll really smooth out those edges and make them look good. Let's click OK once you've got that, and you've now got a selection around your cube. What we'll do is layer mask that as well, so add the layer mask in. Use your move tool now to move the sugar over to the side, resize it, make sure you're holding shift when you resize it, and we're going to put, we'll just chuck 2 cubes in I reckon over the side here. Now make them fairly small so they actually look like sugar cubes, probably about that size at the very most. Press the tick at the top once you've got the first one in, hold down the Alt key and duplicate it by dragging a second one. Give him a rotate so they don't look the same. Just put them near each other like so. Press the tick at the top again. You've now got your 2 sugar cubes in. Feel free to move them around. If you want to add a third one in, you can, but I think something like that is looking pretty good. So that's how our page is looking so far. Okay, we might just put some text in next, and then we're getting pretty close to being finished. Alright, so what I'll do is I might save that for now because we have done a fair bit of work. We'll just call it breakfast flyer. Save it. And actually I'm going to pause it here. I might do a third part to this tutorial. It's really blowing out with its length. I told you it was going to be a long one. So I'll come back in the next video. We'll put the text in, put some final adjustments on the color, and we'll be finished.